So what is Linux? I mean, GNU Linux. First thing, introduction. So welcome to the wonderful world of Linux. Linux is a powerful and versatile operating system that is used by millions of people around the world. It is free, open source, and can be customized to fit your needs. Whatever, if you are a student, a developer, or a power user, Linux has something to offer you. In this course, you will learn the basics of Linux, including how to use the command line, navigate the file system, and install software. You will also learn about some of the distribution of Linux, such as Ubuntu, Fedora, and Debian. By the end of this course, you will be able to use Linux confidentially and productively. So, who use Linux? Okay, who use Linux? So Linux is everywhere. The world runs smarter with Linux. 99% of the world top supercomputers run Linux. 1.4 billion active users of Linux-based Android devices. 80% of all stock exchanges rely on Linux. Linux goes where no man has gone before. 32 space missions completed with Linux. Linux is helping NASA, Curiosity rover, explore Mars. SpaceX uses Linux on the Dragon and Falcon 9 spacecraft. Linux is transforming transportation. US air traffic controls run on Linux. We see here Queensland motorways rely on Linux for smart traffic management. Linux help run bullet train in Japan. So Linux is everywhere. Linux is big in Hollywood. 95% of desktop and servers use Linux for animation and visual effect. Titanic was the first feature film produced on Linux servers. It took 9,100 computer rendering years to produce the CRUDs for big data to the Big Bang. Linux helped IBM Watson analyze 200 million pages of clinical data in 15 seconds. The God particle was discovered using CERN's Linux-powered Large Hadron Collider. So Amazon, Google, even Microsoft use Linux to power their cloud servers. Let's continue. History of GNU Linux. Why it's GNU Linux instead of Linux? Okay, we say GNU Linux to be historically accurate. So the GNU project started development on complete free operating system in the 1980s, lacking only a kernel. This is when Linus Torvalds created the Linux kernel in 1991. It perfectly fits the missing piece for the GNU system. The argument is that the majority of component and philosophy come from the GNU project. Hence the emphasis on their contribution. Crediting all the developers worked on various GNU applications and tools. And GNU Linux acknowledged their work alongside Linus Torvalds' contribution to the kernel, differentiating from commercial distribution. Some Linux distributions include non-free software, which goes against the GNU project philosophy. Using GNU Linux helps distinguish the free software ecosystem from such distribution. So why Linux is widely used? Catchiness and brevity, because Linux is shorter, easier to remember, and roll off the tongue more smoothly than GNU Linux. Common usage over time, Linux has become the widely acceptable term, often used by developers, media, and everyday user, etc. It focuses on the kernel because some argue that the Linux kernel is the essential core of the operating system, while the GNU components are more diverse and interchangeable. It all began in 1983 with a vision from Richard Stallman, a programmer pioneer for freedom, embarked on a bold mission. He created the GNU, a complete free operating system guided the 4 freedoms laid out in the 1985 GNU Manifesto: to run, copy, modify, and share software without shackles. Salman and the countless volunteers started brick by brick crafting essential tools like GCC compiler and the Bash shell. But a missing piece remained: They created the software GNU. They wanted to create an operating system, and almost all components. Thing that remained is the kernel. So this is Richard Stallman, creator of the GNU project. Press F5 for respect. Thank you. And we have here a brief history of Linux. Linux was created in 1991 by Linus Torvalds, a Finnish computer science student. Torvalds was inspired by the Unix operating system, but he wanted to create a free and open source alternative. He released the first version of the Linux kernel, the core of the operating system in 1991. The Linux kernel was adopted by a community of developers who began to create additional software for the operating system. Here we are talking about GNU. This software called GNU software was already under development by the Free Software Foundation. Stallman. Together, the Linux kernel and the GNU software formed the GNU Linux operating system. Linux has become increasingly powerful in recent years, though Linus Torvalds, this man here, created the kernel, and this man created the other apps that we use with the kernel, that communicate with the kernel. Okay, and both of them are open source. They combined it and we give us GNU Linux. Explain some of the terms we used. So operating system, it's like Windows. Okay, I'm pretty sure you understand, but for the majority of people, operating system is like Windows. Only Windows is proprietary to Microsoft, and Linux is open source. It means anyone can read the code, the source, and modify it if they want. So, the kernel. At the heart of every operating system lies the kernel, the essential manager that controls, resources, and bridges the gap between application and hardware. Okay, while most Linux distributions favor a monolithic kernel architecture, some, like GNU, opt for a more modular microkernel approach. Regardless of the design, the kernel is intricate components work together seamlessly to power your computer experience. What does it mean, that the kernel? It's in the kernel that we have memory management, process management, file management, device management, security, networking, and system calls. The kernel is what provides this to the other software that we have on our computer. It's what connects for example, it's what connects the hardware with the software. It's the kernel. Nice. Now you're gonna see what is a shell. A shell is a user interface that allow you to interact with an operating system or the kernel, okay, using commands and scripts. It acts as a translator, interpreter, interpreting your instruction and relaying them to the kernel to execute tasks. It's often referred to as a command line interface, CLI, because it's typically involve typing command in a text-based environment. Accessing a shell. So we have two ways to accessing a shell. It's either by using a terminal emulator, a graphical application that provides a Windows for interacting with the shell, or a remote access, okay, connecting to the shell on the remote machine using tool like SSH. There is also connecting like with serial, but it's almost too old. We don't use it anymore. Okay, there is SSH and there is serial and there is terminal emulator. Thank you for watching.